Okay, started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Business Performance webinar series. Today, our topic is Empower Internal Communications and Build an Army of Company Advocates, which I strongly recommend, only because I see it work phenomenally well. So again, this is our weekly webinar series that we produce, and we welcome you to Business Performance. We want you to know that we are a not-for-profit organization, and we're a community of executive volunteers that volunteer our time to show organizations and individuals how to invigorate their careers and accelerate the performance of their organizations, be it a company, nonprofit, or whatever. Today, you can see me there. I'm your host, Victor Dominguez, Executive Director of Business Performance USA. And our presenter today, more importantly, is Cynthia Stewart. Cynthia is Managing Partner of Evermore Services. I'm going to tell you a little more about Cynthia, but first let me just cover a little housekeeping today because we want to make sure this hour is worth your time. And we encourage you to ask questions using the chat or the question feature on the dashboard. That kind of interaction really helps us understand what your needs and requirements are, and that's really the whole purpose of Business Performance USA. We're here to interact with you and share the same advice and practices that we use with our clients. So if you have a specific question about a workplace issue, you can email me. We'll give you Cynthia's email address towards the end, but I can always direct any questions you have to the most appropriate responder, and you can see my email address there. And also, we welcome you and encourage you to become a member of Business Performance USA. You can see the button there on the right with the B, the pollinator and collaborator, if you will. You go to our website, businessperformanceusa.org, click on that button, just a few questions, and voila, you are a member. It's always complimentary. We're a community of business professionals, and I think you'll find some good folks to collaborate with there and brainstorm. So let me tell you quickly about Cynthia. She's a co-founder of Business Performance USA. She's also the managing partner for Evermore Services. Evermore Services works with clients and organizations. You'll get a feel for what she does today. When I think of Cynthia, I think first of quality. She leads the quality movement in this country and globally, and she's superb at processes, which she'll be showing you today. Now, Cynthia formed Evermore Services to guide leaders in making a difference in their companies and communities. She regularly shares her insights and counsel with diverse industries, both public and private, and she's just wonderful to be with. She's also successfully led and directed culture change teams at all levels, really across 11 states during her tenure as Senior Internal Business Improvement Advisor with South and Southwest and American Electric Power. And that includes strategic merger assignments, no small thing, that created the third largest value generating utility in the United States. She's worked with thousands of people within hundreds of teams and growing 150 million in direct savings and close to 2 billion in indirect savings. So she really earns her value, and we're honored to have you here today, Cynthia. So thank you very much. And I'm just going to turn it over to you, let you take it away.
It's always interesting to hear yourself introduced. Thank you for that, Victor. It's been a long and wonderful career, I can say that. Worked with so many wonderful people across the years. You know, I'm interested about your company, the people that are on this call today, and I'm interested in your thoughts and what you think about your company in terms of your company's most important advocate. So what I'm going to do is now launch a poll, and this will kind of help me with understanding who's on today. So I'm going to launch this poll, and it's going to ask you to answer a question. The question is, who is your company's most important advocate? I almost said favorite advocate, but let's go for important advocate. And if you would just select one of the following: customers, clients, company leaders, employees, volunteers, and I'll watch. And as soon as everyone has voted, I'll go ahead and close the poll. All right, looks like we've got about 50%, and
coming along. Just a quick, for those that are looking for how to vote, use the interface, go to polls, and you can click on one of the radio buttons there. Cast your vote.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Victor.
participating. It's all yours.
Oh, good. Okay, so we just hit 100%, and I'm going to close the poll now. And that's very interesting. We had a high majority that said employees are.
Okay, we have a change in screen, and we've.
There we go. It's just an interface problem. Do you see the screen now? Victor, I've lost your sound. Okay. What I'm seeing on this is that most everybody said that employees are their most important advocate. Now, I had
On
a
your
few.
lead.
Are you there, Victor?
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so what I'm seeing is that while employees were the top selected, a lot of people said investors or donors. And that's not uncommon, investors or donors, because I worked in a company that said the stakeholders or the stockholders, the shareholders, were the most important advocate for the company. So it is, by my recollection and by my experience, it is employees, excuse me, that are an employer's most important advocate. And I'm going to talk about that today. Let me ask one more polling question here. Let me ask why you joined this webinar. So I'm going to launch that poll. And as Victor said, you'll look for polls on your control panel and then just select the number. So is it 1 or 2? There's a big change afoot in my company, and that's why I'm on this webinar. I want to hear about how you talk about internal change and get people to advocate for that change. Or there's no big change, we just need better communications in our company. Okay. And with that, I'm going to launch the second poll. And apparently, there we go. Let me launch that second poll. There we go. Launching that poll now. There's big change afoot or no change. You'll go ahead and vote on that.
Thank you for your participation in the poll. Again, it always helps us to understand what your situation is in your environment so we can make our messages and our information more relevant for you. Okay,
I'm closing that poll because what I found is that it's split between 1 and 2. So we have a mix of an audience, and this is going to help me with my examples when I talk about this. So we have a mix. There are people who have big change afoot, so they have a lot to communicate about this big change and bring people along. And there are those who just need better communication inside their company. Excuse me. Well, I named this Building an Army of Advocates. And the reason that you need your employees to advocate for your company is because when they are excited about your company, when they are happy to be working for the company, that comes through their voice, it comes through their face, it comes through the way that they deal with customers. And that's what drives high customer satisfaction and loyalty, because the experience, that moment of truth between the employee and the customer, is heightened when you have an army of internal advocates. Another reason is that through those great customer experiences, those customers come back time over time, and that helps to grow your revenue. And of course, finally, you build goodwill, you build value and goodwill for your company across time when your employees are advocating for the company. So, I have this image of Apple employees all walking around with, whenever I go in a store, of course, they're there to work with people, but they really know their product and they really advocate for the product because they like working with the product. So, if you think of Disney World and how you're treated when you go to Disney World, and how everyone, even though they're there every day doing the same act, or the same job, they all seem very excited to be there. And that really builds your brand value and the goodwill in the community. So um, let's say that your company is planning a reorganization or a merger or a leadership change or maybe a major product launch, or they're going to sell off a division, or there's a stock offering. Should employees read this in the newspaper or hear those kind of things in the news? So, how do you treat employees like insiders while avoiding negative fallout? And that seems to be one of the reasons that people, especially leaders in companies, when there's big changes like those that I mentioned, are afoot, they don't let the employees know what's going on. And the big reason is, well, there's going to be this negative fallout if we tell employees information. Well, that's true in cases where you've got, say, a stock offering or there's a major change at the very top level to some extent. Now, what you need to do is if you're a major corporation, you just have to get with the right people and find out what can be shared. But I guarantee that whether you share it or not, there's something always leaks out into the marketplace. So you want to go as far as you possibly can to stay within the bounds of letting your employees know what's going on in the company. Tell them that you can't tell them if that's all you need to say. You can say, yes, there's change afoot, and I'm not at liberty to let you know that. As soon as we have information, we will let you know. You can say that. And the more that they experience that truth, that knowing that they're going to be an insider, they're going to know what's going on, the better off you are. So you actually do yourself more harm by not treating employees like insiders than any negative fallout that you might get.
Just a quick note on that, Cynthia, that you and I believe, and I've always found that it's important for employees to understand fully what the company's strategy is and what the role is in executing on that strategy. It's you and I both have been involved in mergers. I found it very, very effective to communicate among the strategies that we are in a M&A mode, a merger and acquisition road, and you could expect acquisitions to come along down the future. And so they're not surprised by it. In fact, they've been working towards it, but they also understand, because you treat them respectfully with dignity and with honesty, that there's some information they can't be told at the time. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that when there is an acquisition, it should come as welcome news if you're proactive and transparent in your communications to the degree you can. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. That's been my experience. I've experienced both where the employees were not in the know and where the employees were told as much as they could be. And in one case, there was a major reorganization with moves out of people's states where their families and they'd been all their lives into one state. And that was a hugely successful restructuring of the business because of the way that they handled the communication from the beginning. And why is that? Well, it boils down to this. Relationships, as we know, are baked into our DNA. So relationships are everything pivots from a relationship. I'll never forget when I was in an employee evaluation with my boss. He was evaluating me, and I told him, I said, I felt like that relationships were really how I needed to work. I needed to have the relationship and then work from the relationship. And I've always felt that way, and I've noticed that the stronger the relationships, the stronger the outcomes. And so, what's part of that is that communication is at the heart of all relationships. In other words, if you want to have good relationships with your employees or good relationships with others, at the base of that is good communications. And when you have good relationships, you have good outcomes. I love this picture of this young couple. So their good outcome is it looks like they're heading towards marriage. I'm getting that impression anyway. When it comes to internal communications, that good internal communication sets up good employee relations, and good employee relations sets up good customer outcomes. And it's whenever there are good internal communications, and that means hierarchically, say from the leadership to the employees, leadership and management to employees, as well as um, vertically across the organizations from one department to the next, from marketing to sales, from engineering to marketing, and so forth. When people have good internal communications, you have better employee relations, you have better teams, you just have better outcomes all the way around for the company. And so I can't stress how important communications are to the bottom line. So I'm going to tee up a really simple model for you guys in terms of how how you can drive good internal communications. And there's 5 things you can do: plan it, prepare it, share it, discuss it, and reward it. Now, for example, I'm going to take an example that there's a new CEO on board. And what else do they do but reorganize the organization? And they have all their favorite systems that they like. So they bring in a brand new system, and it changes the way that people work. I mean, so many of us are familiar with this going on in companies of all sizes. So you can see that this fellow is pulling his hair out, and sorry, my screen went black. There we go. He's pulling his hair out because look at the very nature of the work that he's doing is changing. And I've worked in change. I'm sometimes call myself a midwife to change. I've always been able to birth new change, new strategic direction, new organizations, new products, new services, new teams, you name it. And the reason is that I never worry about resistance. I understand that resistance is natural. Change is natural. Resistance to change is natural. Those are natural phenomenons. And so when we prepare for change, what we need to do is recognize there will be resistance. Now, some people just think that people are resisting because they're stubborn, because they don't like the new change and the way it's going to affect them. And that's true to some extent, but having been affected by change myself, what's true is all of a sudden a habit that was second nature to me. So for instance, working in a Microsoft environment was second nature to me, and all of a sudden I started working in a Mac environment, and that was really different. I mean, it slowed me down. I wasn't productive. I had old habits that I could rely on and that made me very productive. So there's great reasons why people naturally resist change, and it has to do with, gosh, I can't get my work done as well anymore. I feel like I can't contribute. I feel like I just wasted the last 3 hours looking for how to do this when I used to know how to do it in an instant. So those are natural things. So you have to prepare for those things and give people time to develop these new habits and new ways of working. So we're going to go through what does this look like when you're communicating this big change. First of all, plan it. And I put 3 people here because I like to plan things in teams. So if you've got a major system coming, you need to get a team together that is going to communicate across these different organizations. So marketing, sales, engineering, those are the classics, operations, customer service. Depending on what areas are being affected, let's say it's the whole company. Let's say that we're going to take everybody off of the Mac and any kind of Mac that you want and put them all on PCs. So now it's affecting everyone. And so if the larger the change, the more it affects, the more people it affects, the more departments it affects, the more those people need to be in on this communications. And the thing that they need to do is tell people why. That's first of all. People want to know, why the heck did you change me to the PC? And they're going to say, well, it saves us money because it interfaces better with the marketplace, but there needs to be a reason. What are the core messages? I worked on a team that did the Y2K, and this is where I learned that. We did the year 2000 changeover. So we're in 1999, and we're in charge of moving 5 million people. We worked for an electric company that served 5 million people, and had, I don't know, 5,000 employees, maybe 10,000, had thousands of employees and serve millions of people. There you go. And there were 5 of us. We had to come up with the communication plan. And fortunately, someone on there really knew about communication, said, we better figure out our core messages. Well, the core messages were things like, we are preparing for the year 2000, changeover to year 2000. We will be ready. You don't need to worry about your property, that the lights are going to go out, things like that. So we crafted 4 messages. We're here to serve you, and we're taking, if you have questions, please be sure to ask us. So we had our 4 core messages. In those core messages, everything that we communicated, whether we're communicating to an employee group, we did customer town hall communications with key stakeholders like your elected officials in a town, all of your customers, your industrial clients, so forth and so on. We would do these town halls. We also would do newsletters and articles and so forth and so on. And we always used those core messages to base everything on. Every time someone heard us speak, they would hear those core messages. So when you're having a big change, like, you're shifting and everybody's work is going to have to change now, and they're going to have to get through this hurdle. Another big change is everything's going to the web and everything's going to the internet. So anytime you have those, core messaging is very, very important, and it needs to be part of it. And what you're doing is basically making sure that people hear it every time so that they begin to believe you and trust you on that. And you have to think about who's affected and who are your stakeholder groups and what's the role of each group. What do you want your customers to do? And we're going to go through this in just a minute. What do you want your vendors to do about this change? What do you want, your customers, your employees, if there's regulators, your leaders, what do you want people to do? It's one thing to hear the messages. It's another thing to say, and we need for you to whatever, do this because of the change. So you lay out for each group what their role is in making the change successful. You then have to say what the timing of all the communication is, especially if it involves something like, selling off major stock or something like that. That has to be very well coordinated. And you want to think about what is all the media that we have at our disposal. And today we have so many social communication tools, social media, internet, we still have our billboards if it's that big, if it's really going to affect a broad audience. You just really need to think about all the ways, all the channels that you want to get to your people and set up your plan. Now, plan and prepare almost sounds like the same thing, but it's not exactly. What I mean by prepare is really crafting all the messaging, crafting all the packages. So we've got the CXO presentation. Well, that could be, if it's the CFO, maybe they're talking to shareholders. If it's the CEO, maybe they're doing a web stream, you're web streaming an announcement that people will see on the website whenever they go to your website. Maybe the CEO is just presenting to a large employee group. You need your press package. You need your speaker notes for whoever's going to be giving presentations. Don't forget about your frequently asked questions. Between your core messaging and your frequently asked questions, you should pretty much lay out everything that people would need to know about. You have don't forget about your web updates for both your internet and intranet. And don't forget about notifying your customers and your stakeholders about what's happening. So these are all ways that you need to prepare the message about the change. And then it's share. Yes.
Just a quick comment on prepare. One sub note really is I would consider testing your communications with a small focus group. It could be very casual, it could be formal and structured, but one thing to remember when you're preparing communications is that, and this is a saying from Dr. Frank Luntz, and I want to give him proper credit, it's not the words that you use, it's what people hear. So don't assume that you're using the right words, because everybody comes at interpreting communications and hearing communications from their own experience, background, biases, and those aren't That's not bad, that's not wrong, that's just how it is when you're communicating to people. So test your messages, make sure that they resonate with others, they're believable, and that in fact the right message is being delivered and people are hearing what you're saying. Thanks.
It's a great point, and it's a true point. Everybody hears words and interprets them different. So I like that. That would be a great part of the prepare step. And we were lucky because employees, electric customers, and so we can
Lost you.
test our messaging on our employees first. Not a bad idea. And again, if it's very, it's timing, then obviously, for instance, if it's shareholder related or stockholder related, something about the market, then it's going to have to be a closed group, like maybe the leaders, the shareholders in the company. You just have to be really careful about that aspect of it. But you can always have, if it's that confidential, you can always have people sign an agreement that they won't share it outside the company that handles that outsider negative fallout. But what Victor's saying is true, and I think that's a great point. Thank you, Victor. So when timing is important, especially if it were to do with a shareholder, an announcement, what you can do is you can release the press package, say like 7:30 in the morning, and then call or hold an all-employee meeting. You can arrange that weeks in advance. Doesn't matter, but get an all-employee meeting. You can announce it to the employees. Then you can hold back the managers and give them a management briefing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. You can also release your web updates, stakeholder notifications, say at 9 o'clock. So, when you're planning it, you really want to think about how am I going to share this and what needs to be the timing. And I put this little image here because it's not unlike when you're communicating something large, it's not unlike camera action roll. It's very much the same. You got to have everything in order and you need to be ready to go. And everyone needs to have been invited or every stakeholder you need to think through every stakeholder and how you need to reach them and at what the timing is of that. And so in a share it, I used to share it instead of announce it. Share it is a little more, when you're sharing it, you really want to tell the story behind this change or the story behind this good news or the story behind what's going on in the company. And that's the share it side of it. Announcement is, I don't know about most of you, but they're short and sweet. You get to the bottom line very quickly. But in a share it mode, you're really starting to now tell the story from a personal and authentic perspective, and that's where the CEO or the COO or the top leader in the organization, the executive director for nonprofits, that's where they're going to stand up and give the story and share the why and wherefore and why it's important to the company and why they're behind it, and they're going to talk about what they need from the stakeholders, endorsements, that kind of thing, how it's going to benefit everyone involved. And so that's the share it aspect to it. It's where, the feeling comes through, where the interest, where you reach the emotional intelligence of your audience. So that's what happens when you share it. Now let's talk about these management briefings. In subsequent meetings after the share it, you will want to give people a chance to discuss it. So for employees, it's about what's in it for me. In fact, for all stakeholders, you're going to have to deal with them, what's in it for me, because every stakeholder is going to have a role. And in particular, your employees, you're going to rely heavily on your employees to carry out this change and to communicate this change with great authenticity and great integrity. And hopefully when they heard it in the share it time, they had a chance to see emotionally why this is an important thing. When it comes to your suppliers, A lot of people forget about the vendors and the suppliers, but they can be great advocates for you as well. And so you need to talk with them about how they can support this change. And in talking, say, with their other customers or in talking with people in the industry, you can look to your suppliers to be great support. Some people or lots of companies anymore are regulated, so there's some compliancy issues. You need to be sure that you're talking to your regulators about how you're complying, and how the change is complying with any regulations or requirements, or staying inside of any standards. And then also don't forget your investors and donors, and what can they expect from this? Obviously, money is nice because that's why they invest, but they care about more than that. Certainly, they care about the sustainability of the company. And so you can see that these are employee groups that you need to follow up with and talk more about and discuss and answer questions, and also tell people what their role, what you hope they will do about this.
Cynthia, just a quick note. It's not all good news we have to share, not all news we have to share is good news. Sometimes it could be layoffs, for instance. It's really important to discuss the rationale for that layoff. Sometimes it's a one step back to make two steps forward, but people need to understand there's a rational business decision being made, and that ultimately it's being made for the greatest good possible. While it's regrettable that there's pain involved with that, and individuals will you know, suffer because of it, essentially. But make sure you have a well-articulated rationale for the difficult decisions you have to make.
Exactly. That's good. And I've been through lots of those as well. And some were done very poorly, like letters to people. By the way, don't show up tomorrow. All the way from that to, the CEO crying because he had to have a layoff. But so those are very important.
Right. Respect and dignity. Maybe dignity first. Thanks.
Okay, so don't forget one piece of this. When we did this core messaging, I did this Y2K project. We did something that this is where I came up with the Army of Advocates, as a matter of fact. We did something that nobody was doing in the industry for the electric industry. A lot of the electric companies were keeping their plans, very quiet. We decided to just go out and get every employee talking about our Y2K preparedness plans. And so our strategy was to build this army of communicators. And the way that we did that is that we had incentives set up so that anyone that would go out, and we actually prepared speaking packets for our employees to go out, talk to their Rotary Club or talk to the chambers or talk to their neighborhood associations, talk to circles in the neighborhood, talk to, their church, you name it, anywhere where they were out on a weekly basis and were known. We were encouraging our employees to get out there and communicate. And we had a package for them. And then they could log in what group and what when they gave their talk. And that went into incentives. So we actually gave away prizes and incentives for employees to, to do this communication, and it worked really well. It's like having a game, right? If you speak 5 times, you get this. If you speak 20 times, you get this. So this is a great way to reward the employee promotion here. When I say employees, use the reward employees for promoting is what I mean by this. Now you can reward them by promoting them in their jobs, but that's not exactly what I meant here. Obviously, that is an option. But probably you're going to reward your employees just for participating and helping the company make this big change. Don't forget about anymore now. Customer incentives are used a lot. So there are lots of ways through Facebook and Twitter and through your website. There are a lot of ways to reward your customers for their participation in helping get word out. Also, you can reward your suppliers for their support. So don't forget about the rewards that you have in mind for those stakeholders that are helping you with this big change. Or even getting back to there's no big change, just need better communication. These 5 steps work in those cases as well. A lot of people don't do this, but you need to get sort of a regular rhythm of employee communications in place, and do this kind of on an annual basis with employee meetings on an annual basis or a quarterly basis or maybe even a monthly basis. So these 5 steps will work for any situations where there's not necessarily a big change, but where you need improved communication. So by using these 5 steps, you will build your army of internal advocates, and you'll do better in the marketplace by doing that. Any other comments, Victor, or questions before I wrap up?
I'm looking, no questions, Cynthia, but we do encourage questions. So if you have some, submit them with the questions tool or the chat tool. Thanks.
I want to talk about a couple of examples of where this all worked. I gave you the one, which was the Y2K, and where I really learned this. I can say that I have, as was said in my introduction, I've led literally hundreds of teams across my career and dealt with thousands of employees. And those employees come in all shapes and sizes and all attitudes and all skill levels. And I had teams that were the presidents of companies that were, there were a dozen presidents of companies had a team. We had to disperse discretionary funds among the companies. And so we used this sort of a communication approach to get the presidents ready for those. We thought it was going to be a battle. We didn't go to battle. We came up with a way that really worked out well for dispersing discretionary funds. Worked in business improvement plans that affected lots of people's lives because they had to move across the country when we restructured the business. So we really had to get busy with our pencils and fine tune our plan to communicate. And I can say that a lot of people talk about change management. These steps really help you in a change management mode. Change management is how do you manage the change in such a way that people really adopt and thrive and do well with the change. In the very technical world, change management is an engineering change, and you have to log those. But I'm talking about the change where it's really affecting people's jobs. So these steps will help at change at any level. The thing about being a leader in an organization at any level is that you are leading change. Your employees are doing the status quo work. What you are about is leading change. You can use these steps to help communicate. So you plan it, prepare it, share it, discuss it, and reward it. And if you do those things, I guarantee you'll be successful with any big or little change. Okay, Victor, I'm going to ask you to talk about this webinar of yours. I see you're going to do the webinar next week. I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate it. And again, we encourage you to ask us questions. These webinars are intended to create awareness, and Cynthia has given a lot of structure and action plans, and we strongly invite you to take them. But reach out to Cynthia directly, and here's her phone number, here's her email address, and engage her. That's why we're here. We volunteers to help people invigorate their careers and really take their organization or company to the next level of performance. So, and in that regard, next week is my webinar on branding. If you care about people, you can build a great brand. The point being is you don't need a massive marketing budget. You don't need tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars as corporations can spend. What you really need is to start with how you care about people. Start with your employees and then work out to your customers. Just as Cynthia has advised wisely during this webinar, There's a lot of similarities actually between this webinar on branding and what Cynthia has advocated in this webinar. So join us, learn how to build a brand for your company by focusing on people, being genuine and authentic. And with that, we'll close out. We do also, again, want to encourage you to look for the button on our website, businessperformanceusa.org. Click on the B and become a member. That's the most direct way to interact with us. And think of us as your think tank, your soundboard, your own team to brainstorm with. And let's take it to the next level. And with that, Cynthia, thank you again. It's always a joy. And I know firsthand how valuable you are to your clients and your organizations. So all your words are greatly appreciated. So
Thanks,
thank
Victor.
you, everybody. There you go. Perfect. Thanks again, everybody. And we will close this out and make it a great day.